Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I tell you, it's your business to be concerned about national security. Over the weekend, Barack Obama talking about how, he is, doing a great job navigating America through the tough waters that we are living through. There's not much evidence to back that claim. Most Americans are frightened beyond belief because of how dire our situation has become. And it really does make all of us mindful how imperative it is for us to have a competent commander-in-chief that makes America safe. And Van Hipp is with an organization called American Defense International, and he's the chairman of that organization. And he's been doing a series of forums with presidential candidates on that very topic. And Mr. Van Hipp, how are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
Kevin, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your background before we get into the topic of hand.
Well, I served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army, ran the mobilization office going back over 20 years ago at the Pentagon, served in the military myself, and am the author of the new book called The New Terrorism, How to Fight It and Defeat It, where we look at the various threats to the country and the things that we need to do to keep America safe.
Talk a little bit about the current state of affairs when it comes to America being safe.
Well, I got to tell you, the 9/11 Commission, I think, said it best of all, that 9/11, above all else, was a failure of imagination. We're always responding to the last terrorist attack rather than thinking outside the box to prevent the next one. And I got to tell you, I don't see a plan. I don't see a real plan for defeating ISIS. We've got a commander-in-chief who refuses to utter the phrase radical Islamic terrorism, and that's what this is about. The fight against radical Islam is World War III. It's the challenge of our time. We've got to acknowledge the threat for what it is, and we've got to take the fight to them.
Yeah, no question about it. All this quest to be polite is killing us.
It really is, and political correctness is killing us. I actually talk in my book about how the FBI intercepted 18 emails between Nadal Malik Hassan, the Fort Hood terrorist, and the head of Al Qaeda in Yemen, and we did nothing because of political correctness. Political correctness is killing us. And I got to tell you, Kevin, I believe that 2016 will be the most important election year of our lifetime, and it's all going to be about electing a commander-in-chief who can keep us safe.
Mm-hmm. I think that's definitely a worthy objective. So you've been doing a series of forums with candidates for office. First two have included Donald Trump and Ben Carson. Your thoughts?
I got to tell you, I was impressed with both of them, and they both of them pulled no punches. They talked about securing America's borders. They talked about taking the fight to radical Islam. They talked about cybersecurity and going after them on social media. I say in my book that cyber warfare is the one threat that we are the most unprepared for. The Chinese and the Islamists are both killing us from an economic standpoint and from a national security situation.
Talk a little bit about, the nuances between the two, between Trump and Carson.
180 degrees different on style and all, but I got to tell you, on substance, Dr. Carson, had just returned from the Middle East, where he was the first presidential candidate to meet with the Syrian refugees. He talked about engaging King Abdullah more in his foreign policy if he were commander-in-chief. King Abdullah of Jordan, a great guy, strong U.S. ally, who has complained to our Congress that our State Department has put up all sorts of bureaucratic roadblocks in his way to take the fight to radical Islam. Ben Carson was very impressive on that. And Donald Trump talked also about how some of our so-called allies are indirectly helping ISIS with some of their banking mechanisms. And he said that, the other candidates don't understand this, but he does. He's an international businessman, and he knows how to use the banking mechanisms to shut ISIS down. That was pretty interesting and something I had not heard before in the campaign.
It seems like this administration makes it really hard to be a U.S. ally.
Well, I tell you, we're sending the wrong messages to friends and foe alike. Where King Abdullah of Jordan and direct descendant of Muhammad, to me, that's a no-brainer. I would give that guy everything he needs and then some to take the fight to ISIS or radical Islam. So I just feel like, and then, we've thrown Israel under the bus. We're cutting deals with the biggest terrorist regimes of all time, Iran, who, by the way, has been conducting cyber warfare against us big time. We're sending the wrong message to friends and foe alike. And, oh, by the way, we've just cut the U.S. Army to pre-World War II levels, and we've got more admirals than we've got ships today.
We have more what than ships?
We have more admirals today than we have ships in the United States today.
Talk a little bit about the, prospects. First of all, I get back a little bit on the candidates you've been interviewing. Talk a little bit about who else you're hoping to have in these forums, and where exactly are these forums conducted?
Well, the forums are there at Wofford College, which was the home of the 2012 season Commander-in-Chief presidential debate for CBS News. That was the kickoff of our lecture series. This is a Commander-in-Chief presidential forum. All major candidates are invited, and we deal exclusively on national security and foreign policy and keeping America safe. You won't find any forum like this in the country, and that's why I think we had 3,000 people show up for Dr. Carson and 4,000 people show up for Donald Trump. We've heard recently from Governor Huckabee's campaign, and we've heard also from Senator Rubio's campaign, and hope to be announcing those very, very soon.
Yeah, I would assume Ted Cruz would want to speak to that group.
He's been invited.
Yeah, and I would assume you've invited Rand Paul, but maybe you'll get a little slower than hearing back from him.
I don't think he was that interested. We did approach him early on, but he was not that interested.
I wish he would do it because he allows everyone else to describe his foreign policy. And I've known Rand Paul for over 30 years, and Rand Paul is not like his dad, whom I've known for over 30 years when it comes to foreign policy. He actually has a relatively balanced approach. It takes a lot of explaining to do, and he doesn't seem willing to explain it.
Yep, and this will be the perfect forum. We take questions from the students, all foreign policy, national security questions. It's common sense, the things you're going to do to fight radical Islam, because they're here on U.S. soil now. We've seen it. I've talked about this in my book for some time. It would be a great forum for him to talk about his views.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wish the way he treats it like it's a liability, and I wish he treated it more like an asset or change his foreign policy, one of the two.
Well,
and I think I'm actually kind of a fan of his foreign policy.
The United States is the reason we have a federal government. The reason the states and the founding fathers came together in the first place was to provide for the common defense of the American people. Everything else is secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Talk a little bit about, what you're thinking in terms of, actually, this is a very important question. I'm assuming you've invited Democrats as well?
Yes. In fact, I think we're getting close to announcing a couple of them. One of the campaigns asked for information last Friday, and another campaign put out feelers to us about a week ago.
Oh, that's interesting. So, that's interesting that the Democrats would do what could potentially be perceived as a hostile environment.
Yeah, but we want this as an open presidential forum. Major candidates of all parties are invited.
3,000 to 4,000 have been attending so far. Talk a little bit about the type of people that are attending.
Well, you've got a built-in good crowd there with the college students, and the college does a great job making this part of their education. They study about the candidates, their views, and the kids participate. And then people, rank-and-file folks from all over South Carolina are coming, grassroots folks who are concerned about keeping the country safe. It's been we've had some great crowds and great people.
Yeah. What do you think is the likelihood of Hillary Clinton coming to speak to your forum?
Oh, well, we've been in touch with folks pretty close to her. They asked for some background information last week, so I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's awesome. How long do they actually speak? How does the forum look? Is it Q&A? Talk a little bit about the dynamics of how it looks.
Yeah, it's basically an hour forum, but we work with them, and if the candidates want to make opening statements, they do, or closing statements, and the bulk of it is a Q&A. Dr. Carson did do a presentation on his trip to the Mideast, which was very insightful, visiting the Syrian refugee camps in Jordan. He did this last week. He talked about it. He just returned last weekend. And then he sat down, and just like Donald Trump did, and we started asking the tough questions, and what it's going to take to be an effective commander-in-chief and keep America safe.
Very interesting, very interesting. Do you have another one firmly scheduled yet?
Well, we're getting close to announcing, and I feel good about Senator Rubio. We've been in good discussions with his campaign. So I think that'll be the next one for sure.
I think Rubio would have a blast in your forum, and I think your audience would have a blast listening to him. He's certainly interesting to listen to. He's certainly not my top 3 or 4 candidates, but he's certainly among the most interesting. He certainly understands what is expected of him from a presentation perspective, which I don't think some of these guys get, and he works hard to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim. I actually interviewed him for C-SPAN back in July. Wasn't this from what was something else? And I mean, we talked about the electromagnetic pulse threat, cybersecurity, you name it, North Korea, and he did show an awful lot of depth.
Yeah, he knows his topic. He really does. I wish he was more consistent across the board philosophically, but he certainly gets it. And there's certainly a lot worse candidates out there other than him for a president. So more power to him in that. Van Hipp, the best website. You got about 5 websites listed here, and the less websites you list, the better.
The best one is thenewterrorism.com. It tells you about the book, how to get it, a little bit my background, and also pleased that 100% of all proceeds of the New Terrorism, How to Fight It, Defeat It, 100% are going for scholarships for the children of fallen National Guardsmen, and the National Guard Education Foundation is administering the scholarships. And, Kevin, they're not taking one dime in fees or cost. It really is all going to these kids.
Van Hipp, check out thenewterrorism.com. Thanks for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me.
When we come back, much more for you right here on The Price of Business.
Army couldn't hold me back.